Hi, everyone. Today I have with me Daniel Botero of the Mastering College to Career podcast. And I'm so excited to have Daniel here because today we're something a little bit different. We're going to be answering questions that you have about your career journey and really just having a discussion about it. So first we're going to introduce ourselves, then we're going to be answering your questions. And this is a two-part series. So part of the podcast, right now you're listening to part one. This is going to be on my podcast, and then the other part is going to be on Daniel's to get the full podcast. All right, so without further ado, here we go. So Daniel, tell us, how did you get started on your career journey?
Amanda, thank you again. I'm so excited that we're doing this. I've always been somebody very involved and engaged when I was a college student. And as soon as I graduated, I got a job with Pepsico Frito-Lay in their management training program. And I remember being one of the first people to get hired by Pepsico at my university and being invited back by professors and even the college to come speak about my experience at PepsiCo. And then that ended up me being and speaking about recruiting. Like, how does a student get a job at PepsiCo? Because now I was part of the recruiting team as a side, task. It wasn't my main job. I was in sales. And so I would go to the career fairs, I would do interviews, I would do info sessions, all on behalf of PepsiCo. And that's when I realized how many students seem lost. And my first career fair, right, going back, and now I'm in the other side of the table. I am the employer. I am there to talk to students about coming and work for PepsiCo and talking about the opportunities that the company offered. I remember 9 out of 10 students just being completely lost, being like, hi, what are you hiring for? I know what PepsiCo is. Like, I know that you guys sell Pepsi, but they had no idea that Pepsi owned Frito-Lay. They had no idea the jobs that we were offering. They had no idea what qualifications they needed to be the ideal candidate. And really, fast forward 5 years after being in PepsiCo for 6 years and speaking probably, over 30 different universities about PepsiCo and about my journey, I said, I want to help students land their dream job. I want them to go to the PepsiCo or their dream company and say, I know exactly what you're looking for, and here's why I'm your ideal candidate. And long story short, last May, so over a year ago, I left PepsiCo to start this Mastering College to Career business, and is where I help students, gain clarity and land their dream job.
Yeah. I feel like I kind of had this aha moment too. Like I hear what you're explaining. You're like, it was this aha when you were at the table and the students came up and they're kind of like, what's here for me? What's in it for me? What opportunities exist, and feeling lost. For me, it was, running College Magazine and having students who I knew were incredibly talented, who I knew had this passion for journalism, still feel lost and still feel like they just didn't know what steps they should be taking and how they can get their foot in the door. And sometimes they would apply for some of these top publications out of college that maybe they were qualified for. It's just that they didn't have a connection there, or they didn't get it for some reason, because there really is sometimes chaos to this process. There's not always a rhyme or reason why you did or didn't get the position. And feeling that rejection and that doubt and letting that take over and make them question everything. Like, oh my gosh, am I on the wrong route? Did I major in the wrong area? Do I have enough experience? And it was really hard for me to see that, because I knew just how talented and incredible these students were. And just if they could identify that within themselves and also be able to connect courageously with organizations out there, and oftentimes not these 1% brands that we can just list off the top of our heads, but instead these smaller organizations where they can get more hands-on experience and have more leadership opportunities, what that could really do for them in building up their confidence. Yeah, I just knew that I could see that bigger picture, and I really wanted to help them doing that. And that's where Find Your Passion Career came from.
That's so amazing. I love your story, and the fact that, how you started the magazine has grown, and now you want to even help individuals like find something that brings joy to them. I think that's a beautiful thing. Like, everybody can have their dream job. There's not just one job that a million people are going for.
Yeah. And I think that's just the hardest part. I think students are saying like, well, where do I start? And I think the start is within. It's taking that time to hit the pause button and reflect and ask yourself, some really serious questions. What do you want? And I break that down into interests, strengths, and values. I think there are a lot of other career coaches that have their systems. For me, interest, strengths, and values really does the trick. It's asking, what are you interested in? What do you, at the very basic level, what do you like to do, right? What's something you could do for hours on end that you don't even know the time is passing? And then, strengths, where are you, what are some tangible strengths that you have, but also where do you shine? And what are some ways that you demonstrate those strengths? Like if you're this person that is always there for their friends and helps them with their homework, you're dependable, you're loyal. How do you demonstrate those strengths? And then values. What are the principles that you live by? Is it integrity? Is it honesty? And that's something that you're going to look for in your career or the company, in the company culture and the position. Or it could just be what causes do you care about? Do you care about the environment? Do you care about equal rights protections? And so then how can you connect any one of those things to a career? And I think when you are able to do that, you're going to find so much more fulfillment in what it is that you're doing, because you're now connecting personally, and you're going to be able to actually achieve that career. Because I think that so many students get the question like, what do you want to do? Or what job are you looking for? And just kind of like you had students coming up to you at your table and they're just like drawing a big blank. It's like, I don't know. It's like they're looking for the answer to come and hit them. But until you take the time to identify what it is that you want, then you can express that. And when you speak that gives that person direction. Like if someone came up to your table at Pepsico and they're like, I'm looking for, cross-collaborative teams, and I'm looking to take on creative projects, and I'm looking to come up with marketing campaigns. And now you're like, oh, I've got something to go off of. Like, oh, I know who I want to connect you with. Or I see where you could be a big asset to the Frito-Lay team because their social media campaigns need all this help and they're looking to hire right now. But unless you have that to speak and to share, you're not giving anyone anything to work with.
Yes. I mean, self-assessment, it starts there. I think it starts with, when you're doing career coaching, and if you were to read my book or take my online course, the first week is all self-assessment. I think until you know yourself and understand where you see yourself 5 to 10 years from now, I think you can't move forward. I tell students all the time, right? What's better, going 100 miles per hour in the wrong direction or going 1 mile an hour in the right direction? So I think it's about slowing down and making sure that you are going in the right direction. But until you figure out your destination, you really won't know.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so I have a question here from Megan Curtis from the University of Maryland, which is, how do we become creative and brand ourselves differently than the typical college student? And I'll hand this one to you, Daniel, first. Go for it.
Perfect. I think when it comes to being creative, I think here's the thing, right? Every single person needs to treat themselves like $1 million brand, because we are all $1 million brand. If for 20 years you make $50,000 a year, that is $1 million. So you can break it down, maybe work 30 years. It doesn't matter, but you're $1 million brand. So you need to treat yourself like that. And I think the first thing comes down to being genuine you, because everybody else is taken. And then once you can be comfortable and be confident about yourself, then just be yourself and understand what are your core. I think about it like what are your core pillars? Like, what is your competitive advantage? Is it the fact that you are just generally caring person? Is it the fact that you are just very creative? Then once you know you, then you need to show that. And I think that's how you show yourself and how you become different, because you're naturally already different. You just have to be yourself, and then you will be different. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it all comes back to determining what it is that you want, where your strengths are, what you're passionate about, right? And it can be any one of those things. So once you know what that is, how can you demonstrate it? How can you speak it? And that's the brand, right? So the brand is a tangible version of you. So how can you demonstrate it? How can you show it? I think there's so many ways, right? You could have your personal branded site. You could have a blog that you design on that site. You could have a portfolio. You could have your own YouTube channel. You could have an Instagram. I mean, you'd be surprised what you could do if you just created an Instagram. Let's say you're passionate about yoga, and every day you posted something new that you learned about that industry. Like, you could share your learning journey. It doesn't have to just be like, I'm passionate about yoga and I want to be a yoga instructor. It could be, I'm passionate about health, wellness, and yoga, And I'm going to create this Instagram that demonstrates that passion. And now you're that much more appealing, and you're showing that you're thinking creatively. And now you can appeal to companies that are in that space. And now it's like, okay, not only am I have this passion and I take yoga classes and I practice mindfulness, but I also happen to have this Instagram page where I demonstrate all the things that I'm learning about this journey, all the books that I'm reading along my journey. And it's just a way to, I would just say, just a platform to show your passion. So it really depends what it is, and you can determine your platform that fits for you. Maybe you have a podcast where you interview yogis, and that's a really great way to connect with people in your industry, and that opens doors. So I think building a personal brand is just another step in the direction of speaking your passion. It just creates that tangible version of what it is that you're already speaking.
No, I couldn't agree with you anymore. I think, here's one thing students need to realize is whether you do it intentionally or not, you have a brand. You have a brand. Like what every single thing that you post online is either adding to that brand or hurting your brand. And so you have to be mindful of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Privacy on your Facebook and Instagram. Just do it now.
I'm going to ask you the second question, right? So what is one asset or characteristic that interviewers look for when choosing a new employee?
When it comes to a new employee, and you're going through the process of, you're looking at the resume and you're going to have an interview, what characteristics? I mean, when it comes to the resume, they're really just looking for the basics. Do you have the qualifications that we're looking for on paper? And when it comes to the interview, that's when we're looking for, is it the right personality fit? And that's where you need to show up as your authentic self. I think that's so hard to do, especially for any first-time interviewee. Or second-time interviewee is really just taking a deep breath and knowing that you already are qualified because you're there for the interview. And now it's just time to show them why you are passionate about their organization, that you spent the time to research what they do, that you care. And when you're able to put forward that kind of meaning and that kind of interest, and you're able to exude that energy, that I think is so potent, and that really comes through, and it can make all the difference in an interview. So when it comes to choosing a new employee, someone's like, that's who we're looking for, that person that has that extra interest and really took the time. And I know that the way that they show up to the interview is the way they're going to show up to work. And so I think that is the characteristic. I think,
you have to understand that there's different interviews serve different purposes and different person. So if HR is interviewing, they're looking for something different than if the hiring manager is interviewing, than if it's a senior leader in the company is interviewing. And so depending on the type of organization and the size of the organization, you're going to go through either maybe one interview to maybe just having 3 or 4 or 6 interviews. And so, and this is generalizing here, rule of thumb, HR, they're concerned, can you do the job, right? That's what HR is looking for. And they're going to first go through your resume to make sure that's the case. And then in the interview, they're just going to ask you questions about your resume to make sure that it's not just something that is written there, but it's actually, you can actually do it, right?
So you have to be honest about your resume, and you have to make sure that you can deliver upon it and tell the story that your resume is painting. Can you actually can you communicate what it is that is on your resume?
Absolutely. And then when you say, okay, usually HR is your first interview, then you go into the hiring manager. The hiring manager is going to trust the HR is doing their job. And his concern is not so much, can you do the job, but it's how do you fit within his team? Because you could do the job. You can be the best accounting student 4.0, but if you are not a good cultural match, and you're going to be a cancer to the team, then it doesn't matter how good you are at the technical skills, but he's not going to want to hire you. So that interview with the hiring manager is more focused on a cultural fit within the team.
And that comes from answering questions where it's like, tell me about a time you've worked on a team. And if they hear a story where it's like my way or the highway, they're going to take note of that. But if they hear something where it's like, oh, we took into consideration everyone's feedback and we worked collaboratively, like that's something that they can go off of and say, okay, I can see this. I can envision you being part of my team.
And then the third interview, sometimes you're generally going to get is with a senior leader, whether there's a director or vice president, and somebody, higher up in the company. And they're not too concerned, can you do the job? HR's job did that. They're not too concerned, are you going to be a good fit for the job? The hiring manager kind of decide that. They're concerned, what is the potential for you? Can they see you be a future leader in their organization? Because I think companies nowadays are not just hiring you for the position that in the job title that you currently will have. They're hiring you to come backfill some of those baby boomer jobs that the other generation can't backfill because there's more baby boomers than the next generation. And so I think to that question is, every interview that you're going into, ask yourself, what is the goal of this interview? And then prepare yourself for it.
Yeah. And for that last part, showing them that you have a bigger vision for what you want to do, and that you did your research about what the person who's interviewing, what they do. So you can say, I admire what you do. I see myself one day leading the way you are. I envision myself having a team the way you do, if that's the case, because that can be really powerful. And someone can say, oh, I can see the future for this individual.
Right. You got to, when you're getting ready for an interview, you got to do research on three things: the company, the position, and the individual interviewing you. And sometimes you might not know who's interviewing you, but you know the company and you know the position. But if you know the third one, then you definitely need to do your research on the third one. So I agree with you. Amanda, you're dead on.
Yeah, and what Daniel's talking about here is a bigger company, right? Because for smaller companies, it may just be one interview with the one person that's going to be managing you. And so in that case, you really will know who's going to be interviewing you. You've probably already been corresponding with them through email. So make sure you've done your research on what they do. Make sure you've read their LinkedIn page at a minimum. And so a little bit about their career journey, and you can touch on that and ask pointed questions, which brings me to my next question from Selena Scott from University of Florida, which is, how does a fresh out of college graduate make themselves stand out when applying for jobs and during the interview process? Which is a big loaded question. So feel free to answer any part of that, Daniel.
How does a fresh out of college graduate make themselves stand out? I really think it's impossible for you to be the ideal candidate for every single job that you meet the qualifications for. And so you should just have a more of a sniper approach of job searching. And when you can create a target list of no more than 10 companies, then that's how you stand out. It's not about you standing out to all the companies. It's about you standing out to those 10 companies. And even the more narrower you can make it, the more clarity you have, the more you can stand out within it. If you tell me, hey, I only have 3 companies, then there's a better chance for you to stand out in those 3 companies. So I think that's how you stand out, is to have clear focus on what companies you want to stand out for, and then gaining the soft skills and technical skills that are going to help you stand out.
So I have a little bit of a different thought on this one, because I think that going the company approach can be very, you can feel like you're kind of on the outside, like there's this big wall to the company and it feels a little inaccessible. For me, I think it's more about the connections with people. And it could be that you connect with someone that's at a certain company that you think is cool, but that connection ends up connecting you to somebody else that maybe is from their past company that they worked for. That's a smaller company that's going to help you get your experience, get your foot in the door that they may know of opportunities at. So I worry that if we set our sights too much on certain companies and then we get rejected, or we can't seem to get, we can't penetrate or we can't connect with someone there, that we could get our hopes up. But if instead we stand out by making connections with individuals, and building a really good rapport with that person by simply speaking your passion. So if you're picking someone that you want to connect with, it's because they share something in common with you, that they're in the industry that you want to be in, right? So if you're looking for someone that's in marketing for a commercial brand, right, then you can talk about how inspired you are by what they're doing, that you've noticed some of the projects, and of course, flattery, I think, is so important to let someone know that you've done your research and that you think what they're doing is pretty cool. And then asking them for 15 minutes of their time. And that really goes a long way, because most people won't do that because it takes courage. It takes courage to send a LinkedIn message or an email, and it takes courage to get a phone number, pick up the phone and make that call. And that is, to me, how you stand out. because that person is now, they have a really good impression of you and they're going to bat for you. And the more people you can have going to bat for you and connecting you, the more the doors are going to open and the more opportunities that are going to show themselves.
So it's important. Yeah. So definitely standing out means connecting one-on-one and helping you build those relationships. I think there's different studies that show different numbers, but all of them conclude that over 80% of jobs are filled through, networking and referrals. And I think, your strategy plays great because that's how you will be able to get that referral and network.
Isn't that so interesting, that stat right there? I mean, 80% through people connecting. And yet, how many classes did you take about networking?
Zero. Yeah, zero, right?
I mean, how many times were you tasked to go out and interview someone in their career?
One time, one class, right? But I think it's such an important thing to do. I think it should be, there should be some things that should be mandated that are not.
Yeah, I think, and I don't blame anyone for that. I think it's really, though, it's up to us as individuals. Well, you're listening to this podcast right now, put it on your calendar, literally every day. Could you be reaching out to one person every day? This doesn't have to be the CEO of company XYZ. This could be your parents' friends who you think are doing something interesting. This could be, connecting with your advisor and asking them if they know anyone that's graduated that they used to advise that. Because if it's your advisor, right, it's in your industry and they know graduates that are working maybe locally that they could probably connect you with, someone that's 1 year out, one step ahead. And if you just start connecting, oh my God, your world is just going to open up because you're going to see all of these jobs and companies that you just haven't heard of, positions that you weren't aware existed. And you're just going to start connecting the dots in ways that you just didn't know existed before. All right, I've got a next question for us from Alexandra Savier from University of Florida, which is, how important is networking when it comes to finding jobs? Wow, how kismet. And is it the only surefire way to get your foot in the door? All right, well, so I'm going to answer this. I do think that, devil's advocate, yes, there are other ways to get your foot in the door. Yes, you can go online and you can find a job posting and you can apply and you could probably get a job. It does happen. Is that job going to be your passion career? Is it going to be an intentionally amazing fit for you? Are you going to love that job? I don't know. But I do know that if you take the time to network and make these connections, you're going to be going, just like Daniel was saying, one step in a more intentional direction versus going super fast in a direction where it's a little bit more, who knows? So I think that when you do have those conversations, that's when you can understand, oh, what does a day in your life look like? And they can describe it to you and they could say, oh, I'm in meetings all day. And you're like, oh, that, I'm more introverted. That just sounds overwhelming. Like I kind of was hoping that I would get to work on individual projects. You have a better idea of if that's going to be the right fit for you. And it's through those conversations. So imagine having one conversation a day. And that's really basically what networking is. It doesn't have to be as scary as the word is. It's really just asking questions, getting curious, getting those answers.
Do you know so for every open role, how many people apply for that specific role online? So like Indeed, Monster, Career, LinkedIn, for every single open position, how many applicants do they receive? Do you know what that number is? Throw a guess.
I'm sure it's hundreds, if not thousands.
It's 700 applicants is the average. And so I think about a scenario. I think about the fact that a student puts their resume in and then you have 700 applicants. Like now I'm the company, you have your own company. So now you're going through 700 different editors or writers. You have to use a system. So they use ATS systems, right? Applicant tracking systems. And those tracking systems, essentially what they allow you to do is go through resumes and make them keyword and pull out keywords that you're looking for. So blogging, maybe they've worked for whatever it is that you think is important. And out of the 700, maybe now you are reviewing 150. And the average HR, even recruiter, spends 6 seconds per article or per resume. I just think there's the odds of you actually getting someone to review your resume for more than 6 seconds are like slim to none. But yet imagine, so if you still have the 700 applicants, imagine if I were to send you an email with Alexa, who's the one who asked this question. I sent you an email and I said, Amanda, I was speaking at University of Florida and I came across a journalism student and she was great. She showed me one of her articles and I loved it. Here's her resume. I know that you're looking for more students to write articles. You would take that just because I sent it to you, or just because someone send you that resume, you would actually take at least 1 minute to read it.
Oh, yeah. A recommendation goes so far, right? Yeah. If we have a student on our team that recommends a friend, we trust their recommendation because we know that they have good judgment. So we value that. And yeah, we're going to prioritize that person. Oh, that's totally networking.
And I think that's, how important is networking? I think a student needs to then think about that scenario. Would you rather you put your resume and leave it up to essentially luck? Or would you rather network your way so that your resume gets in front of the decision maker? I don't know about you guys, but I'll be spending my time, 80% of my time on networking so that my resume gets in front of the decision maker and is not lost in the pile.
And it's how is your time best spent? Is it best spent going on these job boards and applying to as many things as you can possibly think of that somewhat fit with what you want? Or is it making really intentional, courageous connections that are a little bit scarier, right? It's not you're hiding behind the computer and poof, sending off your resume. It's, hey, I'm a real person and I see that you're a real person and I've got questions for you.
So how do you go about networking?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple ways to start. I think LinkedIn is an excellent tool for networking, and just start with your own network. Start looking at who you're connected with. And if you're not connected with that many people, that's okay. Start looking at your current school, at your alma mater, right? And seeing who graduated from there and who's working in the local area. Start locally, start regionally. Don't feel like you need to take on the whole US and every job that's out there in the United States. Start right there in your town. So for example, I worked with one student, her name is Alexa, and I said Alexa because we just talked about Alexa's question, but her name is Alexandra, and she had a degree in communications but has this passion for theater and felt like, oh man, because I wasn't a musical theater major, I wasn't, majoring in theater, I can't work in this industry. And I said, let's put that to the test, because I think that if it is your passion, she loved being in the plays in high school. She just cares about this industry so much. When she lights up, it's because she's speaking about musical theater. I said, let's put that to the test. Let's just look up. I'm like, you're moving home after college to go live with your parents. It's in Jacksonville. Let's look up all the theater companies or organizations in Jacksonville that connect to theater in some way, right? So it was local theater companies. That's where we started. So we did a Yelp search for local theater companies. Then we found a couple, and then we brought that Yelp search over to LinkedIn to see who worked there. And she sent a message out to one person a day to a couple theater companies, just asking for 15 minutes for an informational interview. And she ended up getting an internship at a local theater in Jacksonville. And 2 months later, emailed me to let me know that they offered her a job. And so now she's doing marketing and communications work. So she's leveraging her strengths in what she majored in and the work she did at College Magazine, but she was connecting that to her passion, which was the musical theater industry. And like that's how it happens. And it sounds so simple, but I think that it sounds simple looking back, right? There's a lot unknown in that journey, but if you just say, I'm going to make that effort and I'm going to make those connections, and you just start looking at and actually taking action like that, it adds up and doors open.
Yeah. And I think, LinkedIn is obviously an amazing tool, and it should be the number one platform for college students when it comes to networking online. And that's a great industry. Another tip that I would suggest is looking at your professional organization. So it's a HR. If you want to go into HR, there's an organization called SHRM. So it's Society for Human Resource Managers. And generally at least every decent sized city has a chapter. So in Florida, Orlando has one, Jacksonville has one. The Space Coast has one, Tampa has one. I can keep going and naming them.
And there's chapters on your campus too, right? So
there's the students, and then there's the ones that have graduated. But let's say you want to network with people who've already graduated. Go to those events, and it's not just HR. They have them for every engineering, major. They have them for journalism. They have them for everything that you can think of.
There's the PR Society, the American Marketing Association.
I think that is a great place to network in a physical location. LinkedIn is easy. You can do it from the comfort of your home. You can even find if they went to your school, and there's a lot of ways to find commonalities through LinkedIn. But if you actually want to go and meet in person, I think that even gives you more of a advantage because you're meeting them face to face. I would look to see when is their next meeting, because from my understanding, most of those organizations don't charge students, and it can cost money to be in it once you graduate. But as a student, it's free for you.
Yeah. And even some of these events are pretty low, low cost, maybe $30, maybe $50 to attend an event. Sometimes when an event is paid for, that the people showing up, they really want to be there. And that can be, that can go a long way. So I think that, yeah, I love that. And yeah, you got to put clothes on. You got to leave the comfort of your home and connect with people face to face. But that's just how you make an even stronger connection. And so when I did talk about, using LinkedIn to make that first point of contact and get an interview, if you can meet with someone in person, treat them to coffee. Who doesn't want to be taken out on a coffee date? That sounds great, right? That, I think, yeah, the human connection is so important. Knowing that this is not a solo journey, that you are in this with other people that want to help you. I think we forget that other people want to help you.
100.
All right, we got a next question from Jordan Thomas from Florida State University. I want to move to a big city after I graduate college. What are the best things to do to prepare for the competitive job market, especially in fields where networking is important? Back to the networking question.
I had to think about this. So he wants to move to a big city, and how does he prepare for a competitive job market?
Oh, this is Jordan, a girl.
Jordan, sorry. See, so for her, I really think ideally you want to have that job lined up in a big city before you graduate. So if you have time, get that going. And then if you are moving, once you understand where you're going, especially I know Florida State has a big alumni base. They have alumni associations. So they have one in New York. They have one in any major city. Just go to the alumni base. They're going to treat you like family. I think that's number one. The second thing is professional organizations within your craft, within your profession is another great way to do that. For me, a personal example for me, I always joke around that if I was ever thrown in a random city and I needed to start my whole life over, I would always go play pickup soccer, because sports is a way that I'm good at it. And so I know that I can go play with anybody and they will gain respect for me because they see that I'm good at the game, and I'm able to then build relationships from there and say, okay, so what do you do? So maybe it's not soccer for you listening to this, but maybe it's something else. And so I think whatever your sports and hobby, using your alumni network and your professional organizations are a good way to start.
I 100% agree with Daniel. I think that is 100% your first step, starting with organizations, right? You don't live in that big city yet. So you need to start with where you are and use those connections to find people there. I think also you could set up a series of informational interviews. You could set up a series of meetings that you create for yourself for a couple days and take a trip and go there for a couple days and meet with people. Because again, it really comes down to meeting with people, either through your organizations or one-on-one, and to figure out what opportunities exist for you because of those connections. It's not the city that you're looking for. The city's that's just so big. You're looking for a certain opportunity within the city. So you need to speak that passion for that position. And you said for you, it was especially, wasn't there a certain field that she mentioned? Oh, just fields where networking is important.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think in the communications field for sure, networking is very important. So looking for, people that have already taken that journey. I would say also look for specifically people that are 1 year or 2 years out of college that remember what it was like to be in your shoes. And they are going to be so very willing to help you because they were just there.
I'm thinking back, I'm looking back at the question. I'm thinking fields where networking is important. I think the most important field where networking is important is sales. So if she is asking about sales because you're trying to you're hunting for new leads and new clients and you're in this big city and you don't know anybody. I think that question then changes, the answers to the question might change a little bit in my perspective, because I think now you got to figure out where do your prospects hang out? And then I would go and network there. And then everything else, I'll keep it the same.
And it's back to joining organizations, right? So if your prospects are computer engineers, going to the WordPress meetup. If your prospects are marketers, going to the American Marketing Association group. What are key ways to appeal to starter positions after graduation rather than unpaid internships? And I love this question because it has the word starter positions. What's your take on starter positions, Daniel?
So level entry positions, is that what we're talking about?
I think sometimes though they use the word starter positions where they're like, I just need something, anything. And I think that I want to caution anyone and everyone from saying, I just need something, anything, because it's a turnoff to anyone in an organization where they're like, do I want to hire someone that just wants anything or something? Or do I want to hire someone that cares about my industry?
I would never hire anybody that would tell me that in an interview, because it's the biggest red flag. I used to do a lot of interviewing when I was a district manager, and I would get, a lot of people from Venezuela actually, because they were coming here and they would be lawyers or there would be business executives, and they're applying for level entry positions at Pepsico. And they would tell me like, I just need to get my foot in the door. I'll start anywhere. And at first, and I'll be honest, actually, I gave a couple of them a chance. I'm like, they're obviously very qualified. They're going to do the job. What ended up happening is exactly what you said. Like, they would leave within 6 months because they would find something that was better, and or not necessarily better, but something that they're more qualified for, that aligned more to what they're doing. And it was hard for me to give other people a chance. So when you go in there saying like, I just want a chance, it's such a red flag for the person on the other side of the table. I think you need to have clarity of what you want to do and express that clarity in the interview. And if you can't see yourself being in that role for at least 1 year, you shouldn't be interviewing for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you answered that right there. What questions do I ask during an informational interview? I love this question. I'll kick it off because I think that I'm such a fan of the connections, right? If that's one theme that you get from what I talk about, it's the courageous connections. So, and that really is an informational interview. So you're meeting with someone, you're asking them questions. I think it's so important to start off with, instead of being quick to talk about you, is getting curious and starting to ask about them and getting curious about them, because you're having this meeting with them, you're connecting with them because you are in a position to be learning. So I would say the number one question is, tell me about your career journey. And it's a question I ask on my podcast all the time because it's so fascinating. Everyone has a career journey to share if they're in their first career, even if they're in their first career, because it took them, there was a path to get there and to find out how the door opened for them and what that looked like, who they networked with, who they spoke with, what experiences they had leading up. And you can learn a lot from that. I remember I did an informational interview with someone that worked at a magazine, and I thought, that would just be my dream to work. It was Washingtonian magazine. It would be my dream to work for them. I was looking for an internship there. And she said, oh, before I had this job, I was really involved with my on-campus magazine. And that was a game changer, just hearing her story and me thinking, oh, I didn't even think to get involved with my on-campus magazine. Wow, just how much more attractive would I be to magazines if I had that experience just like she did? So I think the number one question to ask is about their career journey, how they got to where they are today. And then I would say at the end of your informational interview, you want to ask if you want to have some sort of call to action and some way to stay in touch. So, know your goal, right? Could it be, hey, can I send you my resume to get your thoughts on it? So asking for their expertise. Or is there anyone else that you may be able to connect me with that you think would be a good fit, or someone else that I could talk to that you think that would be really helpful for me? So having that call to action, being able to stay in touch, or even just simply asking, can I stay in touch with you? Is that all right if I email you as I'm going on my career journey if I have any questions? Because you don't want it to just be a one-time thing and then you're not going to connect again, unless you totally didn't hit it off.
Yeah, I think those are some great questions. I think when it comes to an informational interview, it really depends, in my opinion, what is it that your goal from it? And one question that I probably would ask pretty much every single person that I would meet is, what does a day or a week in the role look like? Even though I've actually been cautioned not to use that because you can actually find that information out there, but I think it still is very different from job to job, from company to company. So I generally like asking that, but the questions that you definitely shared, I love that. I think that those are really great, and I'm going to start giving those questions as an advice.
Yeah, well, thanks. I mean, and I love the day in the life, and get a couple days because no day is the same. And a lot of people will say that, and you're like, okay, but really ask them, what did you do yesterday? And so you can just get a glimpse of what that looks like. How much are they communicating with other people? How much are they doing solo work? How much are they at a desk? How much are they traveling? What does their environment look like, feel like? Are they working with a team? And you can kind of get an understanding, like even just the hours that you're going to be working. You can be like, that does seem like something I'd like, or it can help you make a decision. And it'll be a gut feeling when you hear that from them, like what their experience is like and what their day is like. And when they paint that picture, you can start to envision yourself in that role. And it's just a way that you can envision yourself in a way that you weren't able to when you were reading that position description, because position descriptions are curated. And when you speak to someone and they tell you their story, that's real.
Absolutely. I'm thinking back more on that question. I really ask students to try to figure out what are the answers to the open book test. And for me, I really believe like when you have informational interviews, that the individual who's doing that role actually knows what are the qualities, both soft skills and technical skills, that will make a successful candidate for that role. And so I would find a way to phrase it and say, what are some of the qualities that would make successful, whether it's what makes them successful personally or people they've seen that have that same role that are successful in that role. Because I think the more you can find that out, the better you're going to be able to be strategic with your own time to be able to gain those skills yourself.
Yeah. Instead of being like, who exactly do they want to hire? How can I present myself in the best way? Asking them, how were you successful in fulfilling this role? And then you have that same answer, but in a more contextual way, because you can see the way that they were able to fulfill and be successful.
Perfect. So I think the next question is, how do I answer the question that everybody asks me? What do you want to do? I'll let you take it.
We all get that question, right? It's so funny. And we all ask it too. Like any networking event, like, oh, if you don't have a job, it's if you do have a job, it's what do you do? And if you don't have a job, it's what do you want to do? And I do think it's important to have an answer instead of one of those, I don't know, I'm just looking for anything, because that, as we talked about, is a big red flag and can be a turnoff. So your answer doesn't have to be pinpointed. I want to do this exact job, right? I want to be the publisher of College Magazine. I don't think that's anyone's expectation that that's your answer anyway. But I think that if you can say, I want to connect my passion for helping others, I want to be able to work on a team, I want to be able to take my love for computer programming or my interest in social media networks and apply it to a company that works in that industry. That right there gives that person something to go off of, and they can start to understand what it is that you care about. And it could simply be just, something that you talk about, a cause that you care about. Like, I'm really passionate about the environment, and I want to know that I can work for an organization that cares about the environment too. And it's broad, but it gives someone an idea of who you are and what you stand for. And they're going to be much more likely to be able to connect you to other people and opportunities, or they'll have ideas for you. Oh, have you heard about this organization? And you may not have heard of it. And that's another door that's opening, another possibility for you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that you need to, the more idea you have, the better, more clarity that you have, the more you're able to share that clarity and talk about what you see yourself doing, whether it's right after graduation or 5 years after graduation. I think the better you're going to be able to answer that question. But when you say, I don't know, that's a big turnoff.
Yeah. And I think it's okay not to know, right? That's where you start to ask for help. And that's when you go to your advisor, you go to your career center, you go to your friends, your family, your current network. You go to maybe something that aligns in your industry in some way, right? You go to that organization and you say, I am here at the American Marketing Association event, and I know that I have this marketing these strengths in marketing, but I don't know what is available for me. Can you share with me, like, what do you think is possible for me? And it's okay to not know, but it's better to ask those questions and be more proactive versus just being like, I don't know what I want to do, and that being your answer as part of your networking experience. It's really not going to be very fruitful.
Absolutely.
All right. So this last question. This is for you, Daniel, and then I guess for me as well. So what was your aha moment in your career journey?
I don't know that there was a specific aha moment, but more of little evidence that I've received throughout the year that are like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. I think, starts off at me being in career fair, being in the other side of the table and talking to students and understanding that a lot of them are lost. Then comes down to mentoring students and helping them get jobs at PepsiCo. And there's, another reason why I think, let's say I'm doing a tally and this is like the second dash. And then I have other students like, well, can you mentor me? But I don't want to work at PepsiCo and this is where I want to work. And so the same advice that I was giving students that wanted to work at PepsiCo, I started giving it and just adjusting it to other companies, and they started getting jobs. So then another dash. And then I started speaking at universities outside of the one I went to, and students just really connected with the messaging. And then it ended up being another dash. And so I think it's been multiple dashes that add up to, they gave me that certainty and said, okay, like this is what you need to be doing. You need to career shift from, you continue to go up the corporate America ladder, which is great. I figured out that corporate America wasn't where I saw myself, and I actually enjoy helping students. And I just wanted to build this career, make my own career. And I can't be telling students to go get their dream job if I wasn't in my dream job.
Yeah. I love like just the way you described it. It just seems like it's kind of the aha moments for me as well, where things that I was doing by accident, I kind of fell into some things. And then I took that as I noted that that's what I found myself doing. Like I loved, for coming back to the magazine, like I had loved my internship working for a magazine, and I loved creating this, at the time, a hobby business for the magazine. And I came back to that, even though I'd had this full-time job that had the stability to it, I really came back to what was fueling me. And that was an aha moment. Like I loved getting to create this publication. I loved that feeling when I got to hand a magazine to a student, because the first run was just 5,000 copies. So I handed those out and I got to see a student, open it up and read it and flip through. And I knew the pages so well. I could see like what article they were reading. And we had spent so much time, assigning those articles and editing them, and the work that went into it. There was just so much pride behind it. And also I knew that behind every article, there was something that was valuable for my reader, and that they were going to learn something that they didn't know before that was going to help them on their career journey. And just that feeling of handing it to them and seeing them read it before my eyes, like that was an aha. I'm like, this is something that I love doing. And same with working with students, getting on the phone with one of my past editor-in-chiefs who had gotten rejected from a bunch of publications because he wasn't networking and he wasn't speaking his passion. Like he would even get to the interview and talk about his experience at College Magazine like it was like NBD, no big deal, right? It was just like, oh yeah, I oversaw a team and I edited articles. I'm like, you cannot speak about your experience like that because you get bored with your own story. But as I was coaching him and helping him see how to tell his story, how to share about his experiences and speak his passion, I get really fired up. And I love that feeling again. So I think aha moments for me are really, they come back to the moments where I don't even realize I'm doing it, but I just get really fired up and I get this amazing emotion and this feeling, and time passes and I don't realize it. And I'm like, this is what I am meant to be doing. And that was a really big spark for me to start Find Your Passion Career and say, how can I send this message out to every student? How can I be speaking more at universities? How can my book send this message out? And how can my website and the podcast also get this message out? So, yeah. Well, it was so wonderful meeting with you and speaking with you, Daniel. And this was a lot of fun. Good questions, everyone.
Those questions are amazing. Thank you to all the students that put out those questions. And this was an amazing episode. I really enjoyed it. And again, I'm really glad we did this.
Yeah. And if you have any questions for me or for Daniel, feel free to email us. You can email me at amanda@findyourpassioncareer.com. And you can email Daniel
at daniel@masteringcollegetocareer.com.
It was so wonderful having you all listen and submit your questions. And we're so happy to be part of your career journey. Thank you all so much. And that's all. We're signing off. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
If you're listening now, you are now on part 2 of a 2-part series of my interview, my conversation, me, Amanda Nachman, and Daniel Botero. And we're going to be talking and answering your questions about your career journey and how you can have a successful career journey. So be sure to tune into part 1 if you haven't already, but you're now on part 2.